Hello, this is Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Bregman of the Jewish Executive Learning Network and BregmanSuccess.com. We are now up to episode 3 in our Path of the Just, Mesilas Yesharim series. We're going through this classic Torah work, Path of the Just. Wanted to actually film outside today, but it's like the 8th rainy, dreary, pouring rain day in a row in New Jersey. I'm exaggerating, but only slightly so. We're going to do it from inside. Hope you don't mind the lighting and the echo a little bit. Even when the weather's bad outside, no matter where you live in the world, it's always beautiful and a balmy 82 degrees and no humidity in the Torah. So it's always beautiful in there. Let's learn inside today, okay? So we're learning Mesilas Yesharim, Path of the Just by Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto. And in our series, in my edition, I'm up to page 10 and 11 in the English. What I want to speak about today is a concept that the Mechaber, the author, writes about, and he's talking about midos, character traits. We're still in what's called in Hebrew the Hakdama. We're still in the introduction, and he's speaking about a verse that's written in the Torah in the book of Devarim, the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 10. Over there, this is this is Moses speaking now at the end of the Torah. He says, Va'ata Yisrael, ma Hashem Elokecha shel me'imach. Jewish people, what does God ask of you? Moses is telling Jewish people, like, God doesn't ask so much of you. What does he ask of you already? And he lists a couple things. And one of the things that Moses, in his farewell speech of the Jewish people, mentions over here in this verse, okay, that's the one I want to speak about. Laleches bechol derachav. Okay, that's what I want to speak about. So I'm giving you some Hebrew in these videos, but don't worry, we're 98% English, even for those who watch and don't know so much Torah original language. Okay, what does this mean? Laleches bechol derachav, to go in, walk in Hashem's ways. So it sounds like a very vague thing. You know, what does it mean, walk in God's ways? So you decide it means this, and I decide it means that, and the Jewish people decide it means this, and another religion or other people read our Torah and they think that verse means that, walk in God's ways. What does it mean? So we have the written Torah, which has that verse, and the oral Torah, which God also gave us in Mount Sinai, explains what the verse means. So this idea is called V'halachta b'derachav, is the idea of walking in God's ways. The Torah and the oral Torah and the Talmud specifically and the Midrash, they all explain it means what we call midos. It means character traits. Character traits. So after presenting this verse, a little bit down the page, the Ramchal starts speaking about midos, character traits. So this has to do with character traits and all of the character traits and trying to rectify them. And in fact, if you look in what we call the Minyan HaMitzvahs, the count of the 613 mitzvot in the Torah, you will see that according to the Rambam, Maimonides, and many others who count what are the 613 mitzvot, one of the 613 is this mitzvah to rectify your character traits, which is the meaning of the verse that says, walk in the ways of God. It means to imitate God and his character traits. And if you look in the Rambam, the Chafetz Chaim's enumeration of the mitzvahs, which is based on the Rambam's Sefer HaChinuch and others, you will see there is a commandment. One of the 613 commandments is to rectify your character traits, and we do so by making our midos imitative of Hashem's. What does that mean specifically? So he starts to quote from this Chazal, which is a passage in the Talmud also, Tractate Shabbos, Mahu rachum, afato rachum, just as God is merciful, you should be merciful. Just as God is slow to anger, if you get upset, you should be slow to anger. Just as God is kind, you should be kind. That's what it means. And in the context of our discussion, Mesilas Yesharim, what the Ramchal is saying is that, it takes a lot of work, and that all of the good character traits and qualities, whether you love God, you're a God-fearing person, you have good character traits, these are all things that might sound like obvious, but they're not, and they take a lot of work. Now, why does it take a lot of work? Let's say you want to improve your character. You want to be a good person. Who doesn't want to be a good person? I mean, the real truth is, Almost everybody in the world thinks they're a good person. Think about it, right? Think about it. Almost everybody thinks they're a good person. Everybody. Most people just think that the thing they're doing is the right thing. Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon, speaks about this in the book of Mishlei, Proverbs. He says that every person thinks he's yashar, which means straight and proper, be'einav, in his own eyes. And it's true. It's true. ISIS, evil people, killers, murderers, jihadists, all those like wild people who want to hurt people in the name of religion, whatever, they think they're good people. They think they're doing the right thing. So I can tell you, I'm a lawyer. Somebody calls me on the phone and they tell me how somebody's giving them a hard time. The person giving them a hard time probably, ostensibly, thinks that doing that is the right thing to do. The person who calls me on the phone and decides they're getting married to that person, they decide it's the right thing to do. The child calls me up and tells me that they're not speaking to their parents anymore and that they told off their parent the other day. Doesn't sound very kosher to me, but person thinks it's the right thing to do. And the parent who chose to be silent and not respond also thought they were doing the right thing. So the point is, people want to do the right thing, and pretty much everybody who thinks about it would like to have a good character, be known as a nice person or a good person. How do we know what those character traits are? So what the Ramchal is trying to say is, listen, my friend, you want to have good midos, a good character. It takes work. And from the Jewish perspective, the way we define what is a good character trait inextricably intertwines us with what does God want. In other words, there are times that, number one, according to Jewish law, let's say we're talking about being kind or merciful or patient, that the Torah would say, no, you should act in a way that seems like you're not being kind or merciful or patient. So being kind doesn't always mean just give and be nice. There's times where the kind thing to do is to be tough on a person. You hear what I'm trying to say? So that's, for example, kindness. You have to know. Because otherwise, what's the right thing to do? So that's why a Jewish person learns halacha, which means Jewish law. But halacha literally means that the way a person should go, the way a person should walk, because we all want to walk in a way, pretty much. If you're watching this video, I know you want to be a good person. Otherwise, what are you watching a rabbi on YouTube or Facebook or somewhere else for? I mean, come on, it's weird, right? You want to be a good person, but how do you do it? So you have to know, what does God consider to be the right way to go, the right way to act, the right way that's proper. Because it might not be what you imagine in your mind it is to do in that circumstance, okay? So that's why halacha, the word that means Jewish law, comes from the word lech, which means to walk, People have been teasing me recently in a loving way that I got a nice New York accent in the 10 years I've lived here. Growing up in Florida, they say I didn't have it. When I grew up, it was you walk. Now it's you walk. But that's what you do, you walk, right? Lech means to walk. And halacha, which means Jewish law, really comes from more lech, which is walk. Because, it tells you the path to go. Like halacha, even when it comes to character traits and things like that, midos, which we're talking about here, it's guiding you what's the way you're supposed to walk. Because so you're walking down a road at night, there could be a pothole, there could be, something in the road, like you could trip, you could fall, you could walk into something. Nobody wants that. So halacha, Jewish law, which is one of the reasons we study it, is so we know what is the will of God in any given circumstance, so we don't fall into the potholes of life and make the wrong moves that would stain our souls and certainly do damage to the people around us. Got me? Another thing you should know about midos, character traits, is the word midos. People ask me, please define what these words mean. So I'll tell you. Midos, or midot, it's similar, same word. It doesn't mean character traits inherently. It means measurings. Midot is like measuring sticks. Midah means a measure. Mida keneged mida would mean measure for measure, like tit for tat. Measure and measuring is what character traits are about. Because if you want to get the measure of a person, of a man, of a woman, of a rabbi, of a single person you're checking out, those of you who check out my content who are single, you know who you are, right? A lot of you. You want to figure out a person, who am I marrying? Who am I dating? What are they like? Are they going to make my life happy or make me miserable? You got to know their midos, their character traits, because that's how you measure a person up. You know, in 2017 or 16, we're at the end of 16, now going to be 17 watching this video. The Jewish year is 5777. Give me a moment. I guarantee you it's not easy to talk 10 minutes straight. I have my TED Talk coming up soon, God willing, in December. And I'll come back to character traits in a second, but like, there's rules. The max it could be is like 18 minutes long. And like, think about it, if you want to fill that time, you need some pauses in there, you know? It's not so easy to talk 10 minutes straight without a drink. But I made a blessing before, so don't worry. So the point is, midos, measure. It's on a Palm Springs doesn't pay me, so can't stay in the video, right? Every video is just one take. Point is, character traits, midos. It's how you measure a person. That's the measure of who you are. You know, not everybody who watches these videos that I create is Jewish. And certainly amongst the Jewish people who watch these videos, not everybody is fully Torah and mitzvah observant. But I'll tell you something to those of you out there who do represent and rep the Torah. I'll tell you something. You might know a lot of Torah, Jewish law, halacha, medrash, rishonim, achrayim, mishnah, gemara, Rashi, Tosfos, Chazalim. You know a lot of that stuff. And if you know who you are, because you know, if it applies to you, because you know what I just said, right? If that's you, please understand that when you're operating in the world on a daily basis, people will meet you, whether they're Jewish and they're not as learned as you, they didn't yet have the chance to learn Torah, or maybe they're not Jewish, they're from the fine, good people, you know, in the world of other backgrounds and faiths and heritages and traditions. I want you to know something. I'm talking to you now. Your character traits is going to be the number one way they get to know you and appreciate you, and also size up what they think of you and your Judaism, and by extrapolation, maybe the rest of the Jewish people. Because this happens all the time. I mean, I'm just talking now from personal experience, but it's not just my experience. I can tell you it's true. I meet people every day in daily life, and some of them never met a Jewish person before, they never met a rabbi before, they never met a Torah scholar before, but you know what they do know? They don't know, you know, how many Gemaras I know, and this and that, Rashi, Psukim, Rishonim, Achrayim, Kliyakers, Barbanel, Sfarnas, the stuff that I've been blessed to learn and that I try to give over to you, they don't know that. But you know what they do know? He's a nice guy. He was polite. He called me back. I asked a question, he answered me with courtesy. The way you treat people, and I'm talking now especially to those of you who are Jewish and observant, who check out this content, will be the midah, the measure, the measuring stick by which people get to know you and appreciate you in this world. They won't know what kind of yeshiva you went to, or kollel, or seminary, or how hardcore is your Beis Yaakov experience, and how well you know Hilchas Shabbos. That's nice, and I appreciate that too, but people will measure you, and by extrapolation, what they think of the Jewish people, by how you made them feel and your character. Okay? So, we want to imitate God, and that's one of the commandments of the Torah, one of the 613, and it's one we could still observe today, even without all the Jewish people living in Israel, and without a holy temple, and before the Messianic era. It's a mitzvah, it's a commandment, but we want to imitate God, and it takes wisdom to know what is His will, even in terms of these character traits. And to wrap up for now, I'll share with you a quick insight from the Chazayin Ish. Now, up to now, we're doing Mesilas Yesharim, and I'm using this as a segue, which he's talking about character traits, something that takes work to refine on the ladder to personal growth and self-actualization. And so we're talking about character traits. I want to share with you now something from the Chazayin Ish. I'm trying as much as I can in these videos to include original works that maybe you could look up. So the Chazayin Ish, he passed away in the 1950s. He wrote a book called Emunah B'Tachon. Now there's several works called Emunah B'Tachon that were written before. It means basically faith and trust. And what does it mean? And it's an encyclopedic work. It's a classic. Maybe after we do maybe 50, 60 plus videos in Mesilas Yesharim, maybe I'll go through with you Emunah B'Tachon and we'll learn it up. But I want to share with you something that he says which might expand your mind. If you made it to minute 14 in the video, you deserve this. It's a good Chazayin Ish. Listen to what he says. He says, if a bad trait is bad, if you have a character trait that we think is bad, it's like jealousy or like, you know, short-temperedness or, you know, envy, things like that. A bad trait is bad. He says then a good trait that is being misused is even worse than that. You hear? So now, here's how it works. Most character traits are like the, let's say, the circuit breaker panel in your house. There are certain things that are generally turned to on and generally turned to off. So like kindness, for a Jew, is supposed to be generally turned to on. Temper, having a bad temper, is generally supposed to be turned to off. So some character traits are on. Being charitable, generally turned to on. Being loving, generally turned to on. So other bad traits, generally turned to off. Okay? So that's what he means if there's some traits that are bad. What he means by bad doesn't mean they ever can't be turned to on and don't have a positive application. He means traits that we generally think of as being bad, like jealousy, envy. He says if a bad trait is bad, then a good trait, it could be being kindness, or it could be being humble, and that's what he's going to speak about. Being misused is even worse than that. That's an interesting idea. And the Chazon Ish goes on to say that there are people who, out of their humility and a sense of modesty, don't study Torah as much as they can. They think, oh, who am I to get God's wisdom? And then they think, who am I to do things in the community? And who am I to influence people? And who am I to uplift spiritually a person who's next to me? How am I deserve to help them? They're not perfect and they're messing up in that area, but oh boy, am I messing up in mine, behind closed doors in another area, right? So anyway, so his point is that you have to know when the switch should be turned on and when it should be turned off. And if you think it's a problem, if there's a character trait that should generally be not deployed into the theater of life, you think that's a problem. A good trait, like humility, that's misused, it's even worse than that. Chazon Ish says much about it. Point is, you need God's instruction manuals to know what to do, because we want to be good people, but you have to know what it means in truth. Anyway, I hope this was interesting to you. We're making our way through the Hakdama, the introduction of Mesilas Yesharim. This has been episode 3. I hope you'll scroll a little bit back on the playlist on YouTube. You can find a little bit more, and you can certainly, go up, down on Facebook, find more of these. We got a lot of learning to do, my friends. This is Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Bregman of the Jewish Executive Learning Network and BregmanSuccess.com. Thank you for checking out this video. Have a tremendous day. I look forward to coming back to you with some more Torah. Be well. Have a great day, my friends. Bye.